As some of you might be aware, there's a virus that's spreading around.
You know that?
Now, I'm talking about something new, not the old stuff.
That's joking.
And obviously the question that's on everyone's mind is, what does Torah have to say about this? What does Yiddishkeit have to say about this? And you have in Pirkei Avos where it says, Hafach ba v'hafach ba d'koil ba. Hafach ba v'hafach ba d'koil ba. They should dig. You dig and dig. Everything's in Torah. The answers to everything is in Torah. And the Rebbe says, I don't know if there's earlier sources for this, but the Rebbe definitely said it. The Rebbe said it actually in the Sikha Parshas Kisisa. The Rebbe says that doesn't only mean that the answer to any question can be found somewhere in Torah. So theoretically, therefore, if I have a question, I'd have to know Kol HaTorah Kula, or I'd have to speak to someone who knows Kol HaTorah Kula, will be able to identify the place where I'll be able to find the answer. The Rebbe says, no, Hafach ba v'hafach ba d'koil ba means that in every single area in Torah you have the answers to everything. Everything is everywhere. Using the example that we've given in the past about DNA, or
Like a hologram.
exactly, I was just going to say that, like a hologram. That every detail is in everything, so therefore we don't have to go and look very far. But in what we're learning in Shiur v'Emunah, we have guidance as to what, and specifically in the Perek that we're talking about now, but also the general picture of Shiur v'Emunah gives us guidance about such situations. Shiur v'Emunah is all about the Achdus of Hashem, yes, but there's a lot of discussion about the Asara Mamaris, about the words with which the world was created, and we've spoken about this in the past, the implications of everything in the world being a result of the words of Hashem. So coronavirus also is a result of, it was created by Hashem, it was created with the Asara Mamaris. And we have to look at all of creation from beginning to end and realize that all of creation is nothing but one big book which Hashem is writing. In a constant way, because creation is happening again at every single moment. And when you see a book, and you try, if you understand the language, you read it and you realize that it's a single story. And even though you might be reading a certain chapter, but if you have the entire book in front of you, and if you're familiar with the contents of the book, you realize this is only a chapter that started over here, and that's ending over here, and that it's continuing on to over here, and there's an ending to the book. But when you don't understand the language, then every word you look at is independent. You don't see the connection between this word and the word before, and the chapter before, and the page before, and the page after, because you don't understand this word. You didn't understand last word, you didn't understand the last page, you didn't understand the last chapter, you don't understand the next chapter, so therefore you're stuck looking at a word which is written in code, and you don't get it. And the way that the Alter Rebbe is teaching us to view the world in Shiur v'Emunah over here is to understand that when you realize that everything is part of this book, then even though there might be a chapter which is a scary chapter, but it's only part of a book. And if you ever read a book, you know that the scary chapter, but it always is leading to a different place. You don't recognize it because you don't understand the language that's going on over here. Ultimately, everything here in the world is about words. And regardless of the roller coaster of life, once we understand that everything is the words of Hashem, and it's not that there's a plan of Hashem and then there's something coming along and torpedoing it, but ultimately this is all part of Hashem's plan. So we realize not only is it all for the good, but it's all part of the larger narrative, and everything ultimately is always leading to a good place. And therefore the question only becomes, this is from Hashem and this is for the good, and what does Hashem want of me at this moment? That's really the question, the pertinent question. So you have some people who might be in quarantine, and some people might not be able to go to a minyan, and some people might not be able to go to the mikveh before davening, or whatever it may be. And instead of saying, wow, look at this, now I can't do what Hashem wants of me, you just have to adjust and realize this too is from Hashem. Achdus Hashem, Sharichas V'Emunah means there aren't different forces vying against each other. It's not as if there's Hashem and Torah and Yiddishkeit and Kedusha, and then there's something coming and combating. Everything is the Eibishter, and therefore the question is, I might have to adjust what my understanding or expectation is of what Hashem wants of me at this moment. There's a famous story, which I'm sure many, if not all of you, have heard about Rabbi Melech of Lizensk and Zusha of Anapoli. They once went to a certain city, and for whatever reason, they were arrested by the authorities and put into jail. Back then, if you were a Yid, you had a beard, wasn't too difficult for that to happen.
Profiling.
Today it's amazing what we're living with, the uncertainty that we're living with on a daily basis today, not knowing what tomorrow is going to bring, and we have to realize the chesed of Hashem, because this uncertainty we live with now is the way our great-grandparents lived every day, every week, every month, every year. Total uncertainty of what's going to be tomorrow, totally at the whim of the authorities, and am I going to be here today? Is the government going to expel all the Yidden tomorrow? Are they going to let me be a Yid? Like, it's all... So, they were thrown into jail, and they were in this jail cell that was filled with a lot of peasants. And in the middle of the room there was a bucket, and the bucket was made for people to relieve themselves in. And it came time to daven. And one of the brothers, I believe it was Rabbi Melech, started crying, and Zusha tells him, "Why are you crying?" He says, "Because I want to daven, but I can't, because Al Pi Halacha, you're not allowed to daven. I want to daven, put on tefillin, but I can't because there's a bucket over there, and Al Pi Halacha, in a room with human waste, you're not allowed to daven, you're not allowed to put on tefillin. You're not allowed to put on tefillin, you're not allowed to even daven. That's why I'm crying." So Rabbi Zusha tells him, "I don't understand, so why are you crying?" He says, "What do you mean, why am I crying? Because I can't daven." He says, "But why do you want to daven?" I might be a little paraphrasing, like amplifying the story a little. The point, why do you want to daven? You're upset you can't daven because Hashem wants you to daven, but no, obviously Hashem doesn't want you to daven now. So therefore, the same Hashem that yesterday wanted you to daven, you served Hashem yesterday by davening, today you're serving Hashem by following Shulchan Aruch and not davening. And Melech said, "Yeah, wow, that's unbelievable, so let's dance." In other words, we have to be besimcha, so we have to be besimcha over serving Hashem with not davening. So they got up and they started dancing. And they started dancing with such energy and such chayis that all the peasants, they got caught up in it. They also started dancing. Meanwhile, the prison guard comes in and sees everyone's dancing. And what's going on? What's going on? Why are you dancing? They said, "We don't know." Because those two, they point to Eden because they're dancing. Yeah. Why are they dancing? So the peasants said, "We have no idea what they're dancing, but it has something to do with the bucket." So the prison guard said, "Really? Yeah, you're dancing because of the bucket? I'll show you. I'm going to take the bucket out of the room." So they took the bucket out of the room, and then they were able to daven also. Wow. But the point of the story is that we have to know that in every single circumstance we're able to serve Hashem. So whatever it may be, if I can't go to this shul to daven, I can't go to this base medrash, I can't do this, I can't do that. We have to know ultimately all it means is that I have to find the different way right now how to serve Hashem, what Hashem wants me right now, because nothing is against Hashem's plan. That's the main thing we have to understand. It's all Asar Mamaris, it's all one book, written by Hashem, every part of it, the dramatic parts, the traumatic parts, the happy parts, it's all part of the book. And this is Hashem's plan, which we have to be flexible and adjust to, and we have to realize that we are heading ultimately to a good place. And that's really exemplified also in this week's Parsha. And this week's Parsha is called Kisisa. And one of the Rebbe's big ideas, which really without Sharichah V'Emunah is hard to understand. The Rebbe very often made a big deal. Very often, very, very often. Shabbos talk about the name of the Parsha. And the significance of the name of the Parsha. Why is the name of the Parsha significant? After all, the name is a handle. It would seem that the name of the Parsha is simply a convenience. Imagine if I tell you, okay, so today, this week is Shemois, Prakim, Chava. It's a way of identifying, but does the name really have any significance? The Rebbe says, what do you mean? Look in Sharichah V'Emunah, what is the name? The name is the energy of something. That means the entire energy in every Parsha is included in its name. Because as the Alter Rebbe says in the first parak of Sharichah V'Emunah, for those of you who recall, the Alter Rebbe says that V'chein b'chol hanivroim shebe'olam, in every single creation in the world, Hashemais shenikroim b'hem b'lashon hakodesh, their Hebrew name, the Lashon hakodesh name. So that is, that is the koyach, that's the chayis, that's the energy. And just like that's true in all of creation, it's certainly true in Torah. So by analyzing a name of a parsha, you can understand the content of the entire parsha. And sometimes you have a question, I look at the name, I don't see how that works with the content, and the Rebbe would speak about that a lot. So the Rebbe, 28 years ago, Shabbos Parshas Kisisa Tavshan Beis, the Rebbe talks about Kisisa. What is the word? What does Kisisa mean? Kisisa is to uplift. What are we uplifting? As Reish B'nai Yisrael. In other words, this week's parsha is about the uplifting of Klal Yisrael. Are there uplifting moments in this week's parsha?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You have the Yud Gimel Midas HaRachmim in this week's parsha. You have the second luchas being given in this week's parsha. You have the Karni Moshe coming down from Har Sinai and his face is shining with you have Hashem forgiving Klal Yisrael for the Chet Egel. You have moments, uplifting moments. But there's no question that this parsha is a roller coaster. This parsha is a roller coaster. Because together with all those high points in the parsha, you have low points, and you might want to argue maybe the lowest point in our history is in this week's parsha, Chet Egel. When the ultimate sin, the ultimate betrayal of Hashem 40 days after Har Sinai, you have the breaking of the first luchas, the luchas which were Maisa Alikim, Ksufim Be'etzba Alikim. How does it make sense that those parts are part of a parsha whose entire name is Kisisa? But the Rebbe explains once again. Here we have this concept coming in. You have to realize, yes, it's a roller coaster. But even when we're going down, just like a roller coaster, why do you go down? You're going back up. Then the Yerida is a Tzairach Aliyah. And for whatever reason, you can't have the Aliyah without the Yerida. And if you can't have the Aliyah without the Yerida, then what is the Yerida essentially? Part of the Aliyah. In fact, we know there's the famous Yerida Tzairach Aliyah, that the ascent is for the purpose of the ascent. And the Rebbe came along and the Rebbe said, the Yerida is part of the Aliyah. It's not only the Yerida, it's Tzairach Aliyah, that you have to have the Yerida in order to be able to have the Aliyah afterwards. But if viewed properly, you realize that the Yerida is actually part of the Aliyah because it enables the Aliyah. So that is also part of the Aliyah. So therefore, that also is part of the Parsha of Kisisa. Yes, there was this tremendous problem that we made the Egel and the Luchas were broken. But what was the purpose of that? To bring about something even greater, which is that the Yidden should do tshuva, and through the tshuva, to be able to get the second luchais, and ultimately that they were mishkaper, and that was expressed in the Mishkan. So, since in order to reach the level of Bali tshuva, which we know the b'makim shebali tshuva aimdim ein tzadikim gemur michelim lamed, the Yidden were nebach, the Yidden were tzadikim, and Hashem says, I want you to be Bali tshuva. That's even greater. How do you become Bal Tshuva? You have to do an Aveira. So the Aveira looks like a Yerida, but ultimately, because the whole purpose of the Aveira was to bring about the Tshuva and to bring about the Salachti Kedvarecha and the Yud Gimel Midas HaRachmim, and that's why, by the way, when Moshe comes down the second time from Har Sinai, his face is shining. Not the first time. Why? Yeah, Kikar Nerpanav. Why wasn't his face shining the first time? Okay, so Rashi addresses it and says it's because when Hashem passed them by and Har Sinai, when he said Yud Gimel Midas HaRachmim, so it says V'tzakoisi chapi. Hashem says I'm going to cover you with my hand. Obviously, these are all anthropomorphic terms until I pass by, and from that Moshe received Kar Ner Panav. But in a deeper sense, because the first time Moshe came down, and Klal Yisrael at that time was only in the Madrig of Tzadikim, he didn't have it. The second time when he came down with the second luchos, when Klal Yisrael was in the Madriga of Bal Tshuva, and we know when Klal Yisrael is on a higher level, so Moshe Rabbeinu also is lifted to a higher level. As we discussed last week or 2 weeks ago, Sheish Meis Elef Ragli. We are the feet of Moshe Rabbeinu. Klal Yisrael is the feet of Moshe Rabbeinu. When you elevate the feet, you elevate the head. Right? And the other way around also. When Hashem told Moshe, Lech Reid, that when the Yidden went down, so we brought Moshe down with us. But when we went up higher, we arrived at the Madriga of Bali Tshuva. So that caused also an ilui in Moshe Rabbeinu to the extent that he was zeicha to the Karnei Hoid.
Maybe because the first time when Hashem told him, Lech red ki shechet amecha, he's telling bad news. That's your nation that make bad to me. That's why lo karan opana.
Here. So, no, but there's also, he went up other times. Beforehand, even before Matan Torah, he went up and came down. He never had the Karni Hoid. The first time he had the Karni Hoid was after the Egel, when the Yidden became Bali Tshuva. But the lesson of our story, the lesson of this week's parasha is there are ups, there are downs, there's a roller coaster, and right now we are experiencing a roller coaster. It feels, Pasha, on a daily basis, you wake up and you're like, where's the roller coaster going to go to today? Are we going up? Are we going down? Are we speeding? Are we slowing down? And we have to understand that, yes, it's a roller coaster. All of it is part of Kitisa. All of it is part, ultimately, is leading to a destination, to a good place, to Mashiach. And we have to trust the system, we have to trust the process, and know that this is all the words of Hashem. We're in a chapter that we don't understand right now. We're looking at the words and we don't understand the words. And the words don't look good. But ultimately, it's a chapter in a book which is leading to a great place. And therefore, even this chapter ultimately is also a part of the Kitisa. So we have to relax. We have to calm down. I know it's very easy said, and it's not and harder to do. And I'm not saying that from personal experience. It's disconcerting, especially if you have different cheshbonis in different places. And I have one daughter who's in Israel right now, and then I had plans to be in Europe for Pesach, whatever.
Don't go.
Okay. And I don't know what's going to be, but ultimately, and it's very easy, to feel in ganzen.
Here in the plane,
Anyways, the bottom line is,
it's recycled.
you have to sit down every once in a while, you have to relax and realize it's in Hashem's hands and His good hands, and we're going somewhere. This is a roller coaster. It's all part of the Kitisa, and I don't understand, but. Again, the key being, it's not that there's the coronavirus and Hashem will protect me from it. Coronavirus is also Hashem. That's the fact that when we talk about this idea of the world being created by Saram Amaris, at every single moment, everything is being created by Hashem. So nothing can hurt me because if Einoid Movada, then of course nothing can hurt me. Because Hashem is not going to hurt me. So when you have that confidence,
how do you define it in English? It's not going to hurt you.
Einish from Hashem is not a bad thing either. Hashem doesn't do bad things. Einish from Hashem is only chesed also.
I understand, but it does.
Yep. I didn't say that nothing. I didn't say that it can't hurt. I didn't say that. But we have to have the munah and the bitachon and realize we're in Hashem's hands. And not that Hashem is protecting us from everything, but everything is Hashem. And it's all part of the plan. And we have to adjust to the plan and ask ourselves, what does Hashem want of me today? Yes?
So, according to this, that it's Hashem created this, is there something as people that we could do to reverse this instead of going and buying toilet paper and water? Something maybe in the Tanya, without the river brings down. There's some act that we can do to reverse this whole process.
Of course. So there's a Gemara that says, Chash b'reishai
Yasek b'Torah.
Yasek b'Torah. If you have a headache, what should you do about it? Go learn Torah, the headache will go away. And then the Gemara continues, Chash b'Meyav. You have a stomach ache. Guess what you should do? Yasek b'Torah, go learn Torah. Chash. And it goes to different parts of the body. Each one, the answer is Yasek b'Torah. So the Rebbe spoke about this once, and the Rebbe said, the Metzias, we find that if you have a headache and you're going to learn Torah, lav dafka, the headache will go away, and maybe a headache will get worse.
Maybe headache.
So what does it mean?
Might even get worse.
So, the Rebbe says, Zois ha-Torah Adam. I'm not getting into the whole, we'll get it later in the Geras HaKodesh. Torah is also called Adam. So just like, because we know everything is everywhere. This is one of the Chassidus, everything, like we said, it's everywhere. The Eibishter is called the Adam to a certain extent, right? We have by the Merkava, and we're called the Adam. Torah is also called an Adam. So just like we, for example, have 613, we have 248 limbs and 365 Gidim. Torah has Ramach Mitzvah Say and Shasam Mitzvah Leisasa. They correspond. You have a headache, sure, learn Torah and the headache will go away, but you have to find that part in Torah which corresponds to your head. If you don't know that part, then take a Tylenol. Okay? So you want to know what to do. So the truth is, this is what you need the greater people in the generation who maybe can point and say exactly what there is to do.
Correct.
Definitely we could, in other words, there's the standard, which is the Mosif and Torah.
There's a shortage of Tylenol and Motrin. I'm just telling you, I know from the phones.
Anyways, in other words, the generic answer is add in Torah, add in Tefillah, add in Tzedakah. That's the standard. Now, you want to know, is there something specific? So I was thinking of one specific idea, and that is that there's something interesting about this particular this virus and its manifestation in today's world, that it's very connected to connectivity and unity. On the one hand, this incredible spread of the virus shows on just how connected we all are, just how interconnected we all are, and how my little act can impact the entire world literally. And which is why if a person has the virus, it's so important to contain them, because every person literally can impact the entire world. We're all showing the connection between us and everyone else. And then, on the other hand, what is the result of this virus is, would seem, a very increased amount of disconnectivity. People are being quarantined. Large gatherings are being disallowed in many communities. The children aren't getting together. In many communities, the schools are being closed, different in the United States, outside the United States, which is leading to Yashnai Am Echad Mefuzar Mefeirad, people all over the place alone.
You appreciate more what you have.
But it seems that there's an Achdus theme over here. There's an Achdus theme over here, which we have to strengthen. But it's not a physical Achdus necessarily, because physically many of us are being forced to be alone, but it's more of a spiritual Achdus, which is an essential Achdus. A Neshama Achdus, which transcends barriers, and I could be in my room, and you could be in another room, because when there's a very deep connection and relationship between two people, so distance doesn't make a difference. You can be distance, I can be in one room, you can be in another room, I could be in one continent, and you can be in another continent, I can be in North America, you can be in South America. But if there's a deep connection, it's distance isn't a barrier, and that's a neshama connection. That's a spiritual connection. We have also in this week's parsha. The parsha begins with the mitzvah of machzas hashekel, and machzas hashekel is something strange that the Eibishter tells us. I want you to give a half a shekel. There is no other analog. There's no other parallel to that in Torah where we're told to give a half. To the contrary, we're always told to give a whole, and everything has to be complete, and the carbon has to be tamim. You can't bring a half of a sheep as a carbon. And the klei has to be complete. And the klei has to be full. And everything we're giving has to be complete to Hashem. And suddenly Hashem is saying, I want you to give a half. And there is an insistence that we give half. Ha'ashir lo yarba v'hadal lo yamit. You want to say, no, I don't want to give a half. I want to give the whole shekel. Absolutely not. You can't. And what's funny about it is that the pasuk says, Ashrim Geira shekel. The shekel is 20 gera. Give a half a shekel. Why do you have to just say everyone give 10 gera? And 10 is a complete number, we know. Yeah. So why do you have to emphasize the idea of halfness and the incompleteness? It should say everyone has to give 10 gera. Even earlier on the Torah, when it talks about that Eliezer took out a piece of jewelry, Becca, which was a Becca Mishkala, it would weigh a Becca, and he gave it to Rivka, and Rashi says, what is a Becca? It's a Machzah shekel. So the Torah could have said, give a Becca. In other words, give something, a coin, a complete coin. Why the emphasis on a half? So it's explained in the Svarim. There are different rimazim, there are different ideas that emerge from this, but one of them is, Machzah shekel is tzedakah. Okay, in the old times it went to karbanis, today we're giving it as tzedakah. When you give tzedakah, there are two ways. One, a way to give tzedakah, I'm giving you a shekel. Another way is, I'm giving you a half a shekel because of the recognition that I am a half, and you're my other half. And therefore I have to give this to you because me and you are one. And without you, I'm incomplete. and therefore I have to give you this tzedakah. And this understanding that every two Yidden, when you look at another Yid, you're just seeing another half of yourself. That's a neshama connection. Because from the guf perspective, I'm a complete person and you're a complete person. Every one of us is complete. But from the neshama perspective, we're all part of one neshama, the neshama of Adam Rishon, as we discussed earlier today. And therefore, if I am not connecting with another Yid, I am deficient, I am missing. Machzis HaShekel, the emphasis over here is on identifying the core of your being, and at the core of your being, you're only a machzis. You need to connect together with another Yid.
I thought they said this by shidduch. You're only one half.
It's true. It's true about a shidduch, but it's also true in a smaller extent to every single Yid. It's brought down that a shidduch is two halves of one thing, literally, whereas here we're all part of one body. But ultimately, in other words,
two halves of one thing is the same thing.
No, like you could, in the body there's the particular limb. You're two halves, the person and the wife are two halves of the very same branch. But all Yidden were all one body. At the end of the day, if a person has an arm amputated, the other arm can't say, well, that was the other arm, that wasn't me. So this is something which, as we're combating the coronavirus, which is trying to separate us physically, we realize that what this demands of us is to connect on a deeper level spiritually. When the physical avenues of closeness aren't available, then we have to connect spiritually. And connecting spiritually is harder. It's more demanding. Because connecting spiritually means reaching deep inside yourself and finding that area in yourself and identifying with that area in yourself wherein you're talking one with the other. But that is the ultimate Achdus Yisrael, is a spiritual Achdus. Now a spiritual Achdus which obviously manifests itself also physically. It manifests itself also in physical closeness. But ultimately it starts off as a spiritual concept. So maybe these moments of these days, you ask something specific, these moments when we have to be a little more, as society, we're being encouraged to spend more time ourselves. Keep social distance. That's the word, that's the going word right now. If you're following the news at all, we're encouraged to keep a social distance. So maybe we have to keep a social distance, but we have to keep a spiritual closeness. And spiritual closeness begins by digging deep inside ourselves, identifying with the holiness, the godly spark within ourselves, the chelek elekami mal mamish. And when we do that, then we develop a spiritual closeness. And when we develop spiritual closeness, we get rid of the coronavirus, we get rid of all of the galus, because the whole galus is because of the opposite of Achdus Yisrael. And when we increase our Achdus Yisrael, we get rid of galus and all its symptoms, and we're zeichet to the ultimate geula together with Mashiach and all Yidden together in Eretz Yisrael.
Maybe it's also one
Shabbos, everyone.
Shabbos, one to